Weinstein here? No? Steen or Stein? I'm sorry.
Weinstein.
Steen, sorry. And Sherry Chambers?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Chambers. Okay, so Colin Shaw is not here tonight. Correct. All right. With that, we will start with place 6, and I will invite Ms. Haskett.
On. Good evening. My name is Christy Hassett, and I am very excited to consider for continuing my service for the LISD School Board. My passion is education, and my family would probably even say an obsession with education. I want to make sure that all 53,000 students are represented in the district, as well as the teachers are represented within their district. I am definitely the most strong candidate you have because of my knowledge and experience. I've been a trustee for 3 years. I took 2 years before that to make sure that I knew the issues and the policies within LISD. So I know the issues that the trustees themselves have control over. I also have a knowledge of the state and federal level. I'm very active at the state and federal level trying to change those policies that we have that affect our students so that we know, what does that say? Thanks, Barry. And I also want to make sure that we start the process of having board goals so that we can tie board goals better to district goals and make sure that the board is definitely looking at authentic student engagement.
Hello, I'm Sara Edwards. I'm running for place 7 on the LISD Board of Trustees. Because I've raised 2 children through public school education, I've had to advocate for them to get the kind of education that would enable them to fulfill their potential. And I'm running because I know how hard and what a struggle that was. And I want to make sure every child and parent can get the kind of education they need from LISD and reach their full potential. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sherry Chambers, and I am running for a position with the Lewisville ISD School Board. Well, I had to pick a place, which is 7. I am running because I can see a need for the district, for our children, for our parents, and for the schools, not dedicated to being, not directed towards the incumbents whatsoever. I would like to start by thanking Flower Mound Republican Club. I believe as a school board trustee, you must be responsive and receptive to the public election. I feel school board trustees need to be accessible to open dialogue, especially at school board meetings and at times when there's changes needed and are necessary. We need a school board that is directing the administration and achieving goals and collaborating with the whole district community, not just one. Lewisville is currently over $1 billion in debt, and now we're looking at a new bond for $737 million. And I don't believe it's addressing all of the school board needs. At this time, I believe that we need to have more voices in the school board.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Miller. I am the incumbent for place 7. And at first, I want to wish my wife happy birthday. For those of you, love you, baby. And my son is here, who's at UNT. My daughter, but most of you know pictures of my granddaughter. She's not here, and my daughter. But listen, I appreciate having served you for 3 years, almost 3 years, and I am glad what Ms. Chambers talked about, because I'm going to confirm that we are the things that some people have talked about. We have provided accessible education. We can always improve, but we are a district that is open. Since Ms. Hassett and I have been on the board, we have increased transparency. We've improved our technology program. We've made things accessible for students and parents that have not been there before, so I'm excited for us to talk about it. And as always, you'll hear me pivot from the Constitution. Article 7 in the Constitution as it relates to education in the state. That's what we're here for. It's a little bit different role than municipal government, and so you'll hear me pivot a lot from that constitutional responsibility. Thank you.
All right, thank you, candidates. I was told that you are having a hard time hearing me. Can you hear me now? Is it better? Okay. I've also been told that that there's been a request for the candidates to stand when they speak because the people in the back are having a hard time seeing and hearing you. So we'll ask that each candidate stand when it's their turn to speak, if you don't mind. We'll start in the same order this time. And so we'll start with the first question with Ms. Hassett, and everyone will answer the same question. And everyone will have, I believe we're going to have 30 seconds for this answer. All right. For several years now, we have debated the health of the public school system. We see that debate playing out currently in Washington, D.C. and in Austin. All parties agree on one thing: the system can be improved. But they disagree on whether the system is broken or simply flawed. Is the system broken and need to be rebuilt, or is it just flawed?
I definitely believe the system is broken in many aspects, and it's flawed in many aspects. I truly believe education, public education, is the foundation that's based on America. Without educating all students, we will see so many more problems that we have currently today. So we must make sure all students have a great education. The other issues that we have to deal with are also usually poverty-based. In English language learners, we need to make sure that we support all their needs within every child's individual needs.
I would say definitely the system is flawed or broken as well. I'm very concerned about some of the institution of how we're funding schools and how some of our school funding is actually being threatened. Our education is so important because the talent that this country needs is in the STEM, and if our children aren't achieving their full potential and getting that full benefit, then we're going to be looking at corporations importing talent, and we want our children to have those jobs.
I believe that actually the system is flawed. Right now, they have actually sent the funding back to the House, and what we really need right now is to make sure that we, in our own district, are taking care of what we need to. Right now, we're doing a dual language program, and it is not working. They actually started the program out with a dual language that's supposed to be immersion, and right now we're not doing that. We are actually doing it as a learning system, and it's not immersion, and that's what it should be.
The answer to the question is it depends. It depends on the state, it depends on the school district, and it's generally flawed. The Constitution says in the state, for the general diffusion of knowledge, we will build a system of efficient free public schools. We have great public schools in LISD, we can always do better. But the system itself, as it relates to funding and accountability, Fed Ed is illegal. It should be banned. It's not acceptable. That's where our problem is. If the state and the Fed let us have local control, we can have these schools be the community schools that you want and you anticipate your kids to be successful with.
Thank you, candidates. All right, this next question, every candidate will answer. You'll have 30 seconds as well. But we'll start with Ms. Weinstein and move down the row again, the same order. And at this time, Ms. Hassett will be last. We'll continue as we do, and we'll skip each time and move down. That way, we're having a new person start every time, but we'll go in the same order every time. With regard to the solutions that you think that we should apply for the defects or broken system that we may have, we have seen national proposed solutions. President Bush had No Child Left Behind. President Obama had Race to the Top. Do you think that those have been effective? What are your opinions on federal fixes to the education system, and how much of it should be local and how much of it should be federal?
Well, I would say that those were interesting ideas, and they were a start. But no, they're not good enough. They're not helpful because our teachers need to be creative. We need to be measuring accountability, but in a way that doesn't punish the school or punish the children in that school or the teachers. And yet at the same time, we need to achieve a certain base level of education so our children will be competitive in the global market. So, thank you.
The government tried to do the fixes with the A through F grading period that they're trying to put into effect, which is starting in 2018. What we need to do is actually, instead of writing letters to our legislature as far as what not is working, we need to actually partner with them and make sure that they are actually using the legislator and using that A through F system to make sure the domains are working. Writing letters are great, but we actually have to work with the government because it's not going to go away.
I'm very proud of what LISD has done in working with our legislative delegation, both in DC and in Texas, and I give a lot of credit to a number of trustees other than myself. Fed Ed does not work. Look at Common Core state standards and ask if those pedagogical standards, which are leaking in everywhere, are fixing anything. They're not. Student achievement has not gone up. The measurement of student achievement has not changed in the United States, and that was the intent behind No Child Left Behind. It's the intent behind ESSA. I think there's an element of regulation that has to exist. I'm a states' rights person, so very Jeffersonian. I think let Texas run it and let LISD do what you've asked us to do.
I definitely concur the USDE needs to get out of local control. It's not constitutional. There's no reason why we need to have a U.S. Federal Department of Education. Their ideas are always general in idea of the testing. The testing has not proven to increase our children's performance. How many colleges actually even ask for the STAR? No, they ask for ACT and SAT. We need to make sure that whatever comes out of DC this next go-around actually benefits our students, and make sure that we actually have a local control that the current ESSA has provided.
All right, we'll start the next question with Ms. Chambers. I think it's your turn, correct? All right. For generations, we have seen achievement gaps in students. It's primarily been considered a racial gap. We're seeing the closing of that gap over years, but the gap still exists and is still large racially. But currently, we're seeing a growing gap that's not narrowing, and that is a socioeconomic gap. We are not immune from that in LISD, as we have a very diverse population of students, racially, economically, and socioeconomically. How should we go about continuing to narrow the racial achievement gap and also begin to turn around the growing gap in socioeconomic performance and achievement?
You
can't? Not there. Okay. Well, that was a long question. I'll say it again. Okay. I'm sorry. All right. I'll try to say it shorter, but say the same thing. Good luck. Good luck. It's my question, that's why it's so long. So far, they've all been mine, so if you don't like them, I'm sorry. For years and generations, we've seen an achievement gap and performance gap in our education process. It's primarily been perceived as a racial gap, where minority students don't achieve as high performances as non-minority students. That gap has been closing over years. But now we see an emerging new gap that is not closing, that is actually expanding. And that gap is the socioeconomic gap. The achievement performance gaps between those with higher incomes and those with lower incomes is actually getting larger. In LISD, we are not immune to that because we have a very diverse population of students. What can we do to both continue to narrow the racial performance gaps while at the same time reverse the socioeconomic gaps that we are beginning to see grow on a daily basis? This is a 1-minute question. Give me a 1-minute answer on this.
Okay, that's actually a very good question.
Thank you.
And this it actually relates to a lot of different things that LISD is actually going through right now. Hedrick Elementary School is a good example. With Hedrick Elementary School, we have a school that actually is working with the community, that has a very diverse elementary, and it covers a lot of different students who have a diverse background. They actually have half their students and their teachers as well, that they can succeed with that diverse background of student. And they have different dialogues, they have different dialects. The students and the teachers have learned how to compensate for that. They go out of their way to make sure that the students are able to communicate, and they actually are able to bring in substitutes and bring in teachers that can talk to the students and work with the parents. That is how we make sure that we are closing that gap. When we move that school out of that community, we are going to lose that gap. We are going to make that gap even bigger, and we can't afford to do that.
Mr. Tasser, that's an excellent question. It's not a minute, it is not enough time, but here's what I would say. It depends on how you measure it. Certainly we have, at a macro level, we have serious social issues and achievement issues in this country. LISD is not immune to it. 30% of our kids are socioeconomically disadvantaged. 67% of the kids coming into Texas public schools are minority kids. It is up to us to make investments in that, not just in infrastructure, but in academic performance. We're doing things like putting AVID in other schools, achievement via individual determination, helping kids get to college whose parents didn't get to college. It's not just Hendrick Elementary. We have phenomenal teachers and educators doing great things every single day in our Title I campuses. We're down to one campus improvement requirement. One. Now, who measures that? The state, on a flawed accountability system. Not A through F, on STAR. That's the problem we have. The system in measurement is wrong, and we will continue to do the things that we're doing in LISD to improve student achievement, and you can just see that by tracking our numbers compared to other school districts in the nation.
There is a definite gap between several of the groups, and it's disconcerting when you're sitting in the position of board because you want all children to succeed. So we must make sure, first of all, that the children who are lacking in the scores that we need by the state are not being taught by the test. That is not proven to be helpful, so we need to make sure that we're having authentic learning. The more we can engage our children in learning things that are in the outside world and how they relate to the learning they learn now, we can engage them in a different way. Also, parent involvement. Parent involvement is crucial. I would dare say that everybody in this room probably sent their child to pre-K, and they were very involved in PTAs or boosters or their kids' youth groups. We have to make sure that all groups have better have better parent engagement. We have to foster this within our schools so that the parents feel comfortable coming and asking and interacting with the schools so that they can help their children develop better learning throughout their whole education.
Well, in terms of covering the racial gap, a lot of that has to do with being disadvantaged, right? So, yeah, pre-K is a big factor of addressing that. If we can get children into school earlier and earlier, pre-K at 3, then we can start building them and getting them caught up with everybody else early in the process, and then start engaging them. As far as the socioeconomic gap, that's a tougher one to actually address, because I think there's a lot of benefit to staying within your community and learning and being measured on how you're learning in that community versus being bussed across town so that we can mix groups together. Thank you.
All right, the next question, I believe, begins with Mr. Miller. The noted educator and philosopher Marshall McLuhan once said, "Today's child is bewildered when he enters the 19th century environment that still characterizes the educational establishment, where information is scarce but ordered and structured by fragmented classified patterns of subjects and schedules." Ironically, that was said in 1967, and most of our classrooms look very similar to they did at the same time. Is there a way that we can implement new technology to get the attention of children today who do not learn the way we learned, who do not study the way we studied, and who frankly don't live a daily life the way we did when we were children? How do you address the new student in the modern mind?
3 minutes? 30 seconds or less?
This is a 1 minute.
This is a great question, and this is where some people who criticize public ed will talk about individual learning is not good. It's actually awesome, and if you go to our schools and you see the learning environments that develop as a result of strategic design and customized learning around your kids, right? The way your kid learns, the way that kids come into our school, measuring kids not where they should be on grade level, where they started. Because because not everybody comes into third grade being in third grade. And so what you see in LISD is it's an interesting question, because sometimes we get criticized for what we built around flexible designs and the way that we've customized our classrooms. And so there is an important element where we need to look at every child. I've been here for 20 years, raised my kids that went to school, 53,000 kids, everyone has a name. And every one of them learns probably a little bit differently. It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's the gifted and talented, it's the special ed, it's also the magic middle, helping these kids learn. And you can see that, if I had 10 more minutes, I can tell you more by campus, but you can see that in the flexible learning spaces and the technology that we have in place today.
To me, technology is not a replacement for a teacher. It is not ever going to be a replacement for a teacher. My son actually did take an online class, online PE, which was actually beneficial to him later because he'll learn more about nutrition. But it's not a replacement for learning. I don't think that most of us will decide that what we're learning is based on the technology. It's based on the content. So we need to make sure that whatever program, whatever format that we're providing to our kids has the content in it. Technology is a tool, and that's all it is. We don't want to end up with the sage and stage trying to teach our kids. So we want to make sure that the content that we're providing through curriculum, through all the tools, we want them to use technology some, and then not all the times, because we don't either. I learn best when I'm writing things down. So I think that it's a lot different than the way we grew up, but it's not going to be any different in terms of aspects of true learning and understanding.
Our children growing up today are growing up as digital natives, the first ones to get technology right at the get-go. But the fact of the matter is, millennials have been using it forever. And they've grown up in a more balanced perspective, not learning everything off of a PC. There has to be a balance. Technology, to her point, it cannot be the teacher. It can be a tool. And if you don't have that balance, then you have your kids sitting on the couch staring at technology all day, never connecting with the world around him. And it's very important to connect with the world around you. So I think that, I don't think we should worry so much about, how they learn the technology. They'll learn it. They're already learning it. We need to learn about how they're going to embrace it in their lives, but also embrace the world around them.
For LISD, we actually have a very good program. They brought in iPads and they're using Google Docs, and they're actually teaching the kids a very good program in how to use technology. The one downfall is this technology actually costs money. And right now, for LISD, we are in a position where our debt is up, and we actually need to make sure that we're not overspending. The debt actually has to come into this. The children, and I talk to teachers, the teachers are also concerned that they are losing some of their ability in the students to learn face-to-face communication, learn how to talk to someone, look them in the eye when they're actually communicating with them. That is actually where we need to make sure that we're not losing the children. We need to make sure that they still can communicate with one another. They still have the ability to have a personal conversation. So there's a lot that goes into it. So technology isn't the only thing. We need to make sure that we're having a personal conversation with our children, and we're making sure it goes all the way around.
All right, we have kind of progressed through more of a philosophical approach. Now I'd like to get a little bit more local, and we're going to get more specific and more local the farther we go into this conversation. So I want to now talk to you about the state level. What issues do you think the district should be advocating when we're lobbying our state legislatures? And this is a 30-second question.
Funding, A to F, testing, and vouchers are definitely some of the big things that I think we need to be focusing on, the things that directly impact our teachers, our students, our community. Funding, the way that the funding system is completely broken, it needs to be completely overhauled, because we need to keep our dollars that we've raised in our district for us, instead of filling the coffers at the state level. So whenever they continue to talk about property taxes and the property tax reform, they are going to do something that injures school districts, so it needs to be addressed.
So, yes, I think it's funding and protecting that funding, because it looks to me like they're trying to almost cut like the funding in the, okay, I'm just gonna move on. The ADAF testing and the high stakes testing, the ADAF reporting and the high stakes testing. The high stakes testing tends to drive us towards just teaching to a test instead of working outside of that. And the ADAF is, I don't feel is a fair measurement of how we're measuring our education.
I personally feel that funding is important, but we need to be concentrating on Chapter 41 or the Robin Hood, getting the money coming back to the state. We need to be able to fund our schools and not have to worry about the recapturing. Right now, we are worried if we didn't have the pre-K and we didn't have the night school, we would actually be sending more money back to Austin. And we don't need to do that. We need to be able to budget so that we can start paying for things and not having to have a bond to pay for playground equipment. So that's more important.
A lot of talk about funding, but no interest in investing. And that's what the INS fund is. It's investing in your kids' future. Because the state has us restricted as educators and the school board around two things: debt service and maintenance and operations. That's it. Well, here's our problem. The accountability system is flawed, and the unfunded mandates from the state. If you remove that, you'll start to see some money free up. But the answer is not, let's not go for a bond or any other debt service. That's about investing in our kids' future. We're working within the parameters the legislature has set for us within the Constitution, Article 7.
All right, our next question has to do with two current Senate bills. There's, well, I'm asking two different questions. And so the first one has to do with Senate Bill 30, which is a bill that was currently debated today in the Criminal Justice Committee. Believe it or not, it has something to do with education. This bill is sponsored by a local senator, and the bill would require students to learn about interactions with police officers as a part of their school curriculum. It would now be mandatory curriculum to learn about interactions with police officers. What's your thoughts about that? Is that the public education system's responsibility to teach our children how to deal with police officers? It's a 30-second question.
Well, yeah, I kind of have an issue with that in general, because I think that it goes two ways, right? It's learning to interact with police, but also police learning to interact with youth and how they approach them. So I'm not sure that my position is not that we need to teach children how to interact with police. As they grow up through the system, they learn how to interact with authority, and then it's just, that's my closing. Thanks.
I personally think that it's sort of one of those things where there should be some teaching from the schools, but it's not the school's responsibility to teach our children how to behave. It's just like teachers, it's not their responsibility to teach our children how to act in a classroom. Married to a firefighter, kids like firefighters. They know how to act with those. And so a police department, they should know. Parents are still responsible for raising their children. But they do need to know how. I don't think it would hurt for a teacher to teach them how.
This is a complicated question, and I think to have an intellectual conversation about it, we want, as Republicans, less government, local control. And what we're talking about is the legislature applying their element of control. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have it. I think there are things that we teach by law. Sex education, right? We call it growth and development, and some others, bullying, that type of thing. Including this, I don't have a problem with it. The question really is, how much do you want the state and the Fed in your schools? You want them in your schools? Then support the legislature in this initiative.
there's a term in education that the TEKS, essential knowledge and skills, are a mile wide and an inch deep. So some of the problem that I have with that is where would you stick it? So that makes sure that every child learns this new TEK. And that gets overwhelmed, especially before starting. So I think that before they start cramming more TEKs down the teachers and our children's throats, that they need to make sure that the TEKs are within their ranges. I actually tried to I drafted a bill this session and couldn't find a representative to sponsor it on TEKs, making sure that the TEKs could be taught in a year.
Our next question has to do with Senate Bill 3, school choice. That was also debated today in Austin. So relating to the establishment of an education savings account program, a tax credit scholarship, and educational expense assistance program is how the bill is titled. What are your thoughts on school choice? Does school choice help by creating more competition, or does it hurt by taking money away from the public school education system? I'll give you a minute on this one. How about a minute and a half? How about that?
As it stands now, the way the bills are written for school choice, I think that it hurts the public school system. Initially, when school choice was actually developed a long time ago, it was actually to give the poverty and the low-income children an advantage so that their parents could send them to a school that would provide an advantage to them. Nowadays, school choice is actually taking money out of the public school system and providing more or less vouchers and money to children that don't really need it. Right now, it's going to hurt us as far as public schools are concerned. It's going to take money away from us, and we don't really need any more legislature or any more items that's going to take money away from us. So as far as I'm concerned, we need to make sure that we're not having any savings plans. It seems like every time we turn around and we get something, a bill that's knocked down, they turn around at the next legislation and they call it something else. So before it was vouchers, and then it was school choice, and now it's a savings plan. The next time it'll be something else. It just does not need to happen there.
I think the issue of school choice is the fact that we, having traveled around the world for business and personal reasons, I will tell you that it's phenomenal in the United States we have school choice. And if you grew up overseas, you know what I'm talking about. In the United States, we're debating whether we should put public funds towards this institution or that institution. Many don't have that option. Many don't have a system where every kid is allowed to go to school free. Now, I get that there's taxes with it, but the fact is that our Constitution at a state and federal level apply to every kid getting access to a good, equal education. In this situation, vouchers defund public schools. The Constitution says that it's up to the legislature. They have an obligation to fund, right? Provide for the schools. If they provide vouchers and they don't fund ISDs, which, by the way, in Section 3 of that Article 7 is where it talks about ISDs. That is our responsibility. And I'm telling you, in LISD, I'm not afraid of choice. I'm not afraid of choice for money. I'm not afraid of it for our kids because I know this. Our educators in LISD, our staff, our school board care about every one of the kids. Care about every voter in this room. Care about every person that lives around this area. Why? Because we care about our community. And we've been here together, most of us in this room, together, worshiping together, grieving together, celebrating together, and I am very confident in LISD's ability to deliver a great education. Can we improve? Always. This is a continuous improvement process, but vouchers are defunding of the public school system.
Senate Bill 3 has plenty of issues. I am not for taking public funds out of public schools. They did not create a unique funding source to provide what they're wanting. They're taking the funds that are literally provided to us. And then they're also robbing our property tax. So we can't continue to do both, take away our funds and then continue to rob our property tax. Some of the bill elements in particular I really don't like. the education savings accounts. There are 4 other states in the U.S. that have education savings accounts. Of course, they're not telling you that, and those other 4s are specifically designated to children who are disabled, special ed kids, or low-performing schools. They're not everybody gets one who wants one. There's no other state that has that. So another problem with that particular part is that if you have 3 kids and you've only paid $200 for a house that's $200,000, so you've only paid $5,000 in property taxes. But if you have 3 kids, you can take out $15,000 per year. So you can start taking out more money out of our system than you paid in. That's definitely an issue. Also, the tax credits, they used franchise tax last time. They couldn't use it this time because they want to do away with franchise tax. They're using insurance tax this time. So the only companies that actually get the benefit are insurance companies.
Vouchers are draining our public schools of their funds. And I'm deeply concerned about this because I'm not seeing a real upside. I'm just seeing we're draining the public schools, but we're not holding schools that receive these funds to any kind of accountability like we hold the public schools to. So your child can go to a charter school, take funds out over there, and not learn enough to get into the school of his choice. And you just have to read the data from Michigan to see that that's the case. So yeah, school choice, it's great if you've got the money to go to private school or you're in a community where you can go to a charter school and get a scholarship, but I'm not for taking money out of the public school system and diverting it to other places.
Well, now it's very specific. What do you see as the top priority for your campaign with regard to needs for LISD? And what would you do to try to achieve your top priority? Give you 1 minute on that. That's easy.
Is it me?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. Tasker. I think that we have a board that is working together. We need to continue to work together to achieve the results that we're looking for in the investments in our facilities, investments in our educators. In the last 3 years, we've given raises to our teachers every year and did a competitive adjustment last year. We put more power back into the teachers' classrooms than ever before, where they're allowed to develop their own pedagogical delivery of the curriculum that we have. And I think that what we need to do as a board is we have a good working relationship, allow us to continue this process, manage the investments that we're talking about here in this election, and measure the student achievement that we put forward. You can show a significant progress in LISD student achievement as well as the way we manage our financials. We are extremely transparent regardless of what you hear. And so I would say allow us the opportunity to continue to work together. My goal is to continue, as always, to be a very transparent candidate. You know that I always explain my votes, very verbose, and so I expect to continue to do that if you give me the opportunity.
One thing I've learned while being a trustee is I can definitely have the issues that I think are very important to me. If I can't convince other board members that they're a strong issue with the district, it fails. So I have to make sure that whatever I put forth is relating to our students and relating to the district as a whole. I can't have my own personal objectives of what I want to do. It's not going to work, and it's not good for our kids. So what I really want to do is I would like to create, like I said before, board goals. I think a lot of other districts are doing this, and I think it helps the board overall focus on the things that they have purpose over. Because we don't do the micromanagements of the school. So what does the board have purview over? I would like to make sure that those board goals are tied more to student achievement, authentic, actual student achievement. We get the STAR data. We need to get the STAR data because the state is actually always judging us on that. So it's a valuable piece of data. But we need authentic data. And I definitely want to make sure that we're more open to parents. I think we need to have more parental community engagement with the board.
Okay, so I'm running my campaign on 3 prongs. One is fiscal responsibility. One is core curriculum and high stakes testing, And then the third one is, and this is what I'm most passionate about, is providing an education for everyone. And when I say everyone, I mean even those with special needs. I'm sure you all have heard the report that Texas was like driving towards an 8.5% special ed population per school, when the national average is 13.5. Well, in the LISD, we do better here. It was like 11% in 2005. It was kind of trailed down to 9.8. It's back up to 10. But if the national average is 13.5, if that's a C, shouldn't we be striving for that as well? Are we identifying kids at the moment that they need help, or are they just like kind of getting by? Because if we can get it in the nub, then they have a better chance of success. It costs us less money, and it means for more successful graduates.
My campaign has a couple different things. One is transparency. Right now, as I said, we are at just over $1 billion in debt. We are asking for another $737 million in a bond. The bond that we're asking for doesn't meet all of the needs of our community. I have set the meetings where we do not listen to our community. We had meeting after meeting where there were people there that wanted to talk to the board. The board just sat there and listened. They didn't even engage with the community. And that is the problem. We need to listen to our community. We need to hear them and engage with them. There's also where you can go online and you can look at their website. They have a tremendous website with all kinds of information, but usually the information is not current and it's not accurate. That's not transparency, that's just a ton of information. My goal is to make sure that we are transparent and that we end up having information that is good.
I'll do it again. I got more to add.
That's all right. This is a 30-second question. Do you think LISD should become a district of innovation?
I have definitely researched this since the last legislative session when it passed. I think there are a few things that we could definitely use within district innovation, such as a calendar. Everybody loves the calendar this session. I understand. We're going to have the issue within the calendar for the next 2 years because the way that the actual dates fall in August. So I think the calendar is an issue, and I definitely think that the community had a voice in that when the survey went out.
District of Innovation is so interesting to me because it sounds really cool, but it doesn't look really cool to me when I read what it's about. It looks to me like a way of trading off. We'll give the school district a little power, and we're going to take a little power back from the school district at the same time. We're going to decide like if the teachers can keep their contracts or have paid leaves. In that case, and if you agree that kind of thing, then we'll let you have control over your calendar. So I have a lot of concerns about it.
Again, District of Innovation is another one of those where the board had actually taken and started moving towards being a District of Innovation without the community even really knowing. They had an initial meeting, they put together a committee, and basically did not let the community know that this was going on. And it all happened so quickly that the community didn't even realize what was happening. I think there are some good points, and there are some bad points, and I think it would be one of those things where the community really needs to have more background information. It's not really a bad program, but it's one the community needs to decide on.
Simple answer for me, you can go watch what I've said in my vote. No. But we have followed the statute and been transparent. The reason Ms. Chambers doesn't know that, she didn't live here when we had the public hearings on this. We have followed the statutes, whether I like it or not, and I don't support DOI. We have followed the statute as it relates to transparency. The reason, by the way, we can't interact at board meetings is because of law. Not because of our choice. We can't interact with the public. It's a public policy thing. It's a misunderstanding of the law. It's no different than the Claremont City Council or Lewisville. And so we're following the statutes.